I stood there, invisible, in a room full of laughter and love, watching my own daughter celebrate the happiest day of her life, while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. My name is Margaret, and this is the story I never thought I'd have to tell. The story of how the little girl I carried in my arms, the one I stayed up nights for, the one whose tears I wiped and dreams I cheered for, forgot I existed on the day she promised forever to someone else. It was supposed to be beautiful. The church was decorated in soft ivory and blush roses, just like she'd always imagined. The guests were smiling, the champagne flowed, and the music swelled with joy. But no one noticed the empty chair where a mother's heart should have been. No one saw the way my hands trembled, clutching my old lace handkerchief, the same one I'd held on her first day of school, her graduation, her wedding. But this time, she didn't need me anymore. I could have brushed it off as oversight, busyness, stress, if it weren't for the way she turned her head when I reached out to fix her veil. If it weren't for the speech that thanked everyone, except me. If it weren't for the cold, quiet truth that settled in my chest. Had I become a ghost in my own child's life? And yet, this isn't just a story of pain. It's a story of love, the kind that survives silence, the kind that makes a mother show up, even when she's no longer wanted. But it's also a story with secrets. Secrets about the past, about the unspoken words between us, about the moment everything changed, and why. If you've ever loved someone who didn't love you back, if you've ever felt the sting of being left behind, then stay with me, because this isn't just my story. It might be yours too. Don't let this silence continue. Like, comment, and share if you believe every mother deserves to be seen. And subscribe, because no one should have to face this kind of heartbreak alone. The envelope sat on my doormat like a landmine, cream-coloured, thick, the kind of paper that costs more per sheet than my weekly grocery budget. My name curled across the front in that elegant script I'd recognise anywhere, the same looping handwriting I'd praised when she was just learning to write her letters. Margaret Wilkins, it said, and for one dizzying second, my heart soared. She remembered me. My fingers trembled as I peeled back the seal. The card inside smelled like lavender and money. Madison Grace Carter and Jacob Daniel Whitmore. Request the pleasure of your company. My eyes skipped down the list of names, my smile fraying at the edges. There I was, tucked beneath second cousins, college roommates, Jacob's golf buddies, even his barista from that pretentious coffee shop downtown. An afterthought, a courtesy invite. I reached for the phone before I could stop myself. 3 rings, then her voice, polite, distracted, the same tone she used with telemarketers. "Mom? Hey!" I could hear chatter in the background, the clink of glasses. She was out somewhere, laughing with people who mattered more. "I got the invitation, sweetheart," I said, injecting a brightness I didn't feel into my voice. "Of course I'll be there." A pause. Then, "Yeah, okay. Just sit near the back, all right? We're tight on space." The line went dead before I could ask why Jacob's aunt, the one who'd once called her homely at Thanksgiving, had a reserved seat in the front row. That night, I dragged the old photo albums from the closet. Dust motes swirled in the lamplight as I traced the faded images, her chubby fingers clutching mine at the playground, frosting smeared across her grinning face at her 6th birthday party. The 2 of us collapsed in laughter on the kitchen floor after a failed baking experiment. When had those sticky, love-drunk afternoons erdled into this? When had I become someone she tolerated instead of loved? I opened my laptop, navigating to the wedding website she'd sent in a mass email. The gallery glowed with professionally shot engagement photos, Madison beaming in Jacob's arms, Madison twirling in a sundress, Madison clinking champagne flutes with his parents. My throat tightened at the wedding party tab. There it was, bold as brass. Mother of the groom speech, 7:30 p.m. No mention of me, no mother of the bride at all. I clicked back to the homepage. At the very bottom, in tiny font, gifts can be sent to the couple's registry at... The screen blurred. Somewhere in this city, my daughter was picking out china patterns with the woman who'd replaced me, and I hadn't even merited a bullet point on the itinerary. That's when I saw it. The RSVP button. A little digital checkbox next to, "Will you be attending?" My finger hovered over no. But mothers don't get to say no. Not to this, not to her. So I clicked yes, and let the knife twist deeper. I found the perfect dress at Macy's on a Thursday afternoon. Lavender silk, cap sleeves, just elegant enough to look polished but not so flashy as to draw attention. I held it up to my body in the fitting room mirror, imagining how Madison might smile when she saw it, maybe even say, "You look beautiful, Mum." I sent her a photo before I could second-guess myself. 3 dots appeared. Then, "No, stick to beige. You'll blend in better." The words stung like a slap. I stared at my reflection. The way the lavender softened my tired eyes made my silver hair look intentional rather than neglected. But I put it back on the rack. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the white gown bridal boutique, pressing my forehead against the cool glass window. Inside, Madison and Barbara, never Mum, always Barbara, were flipping through swatches of lace, their laughter ringing through the door every time it swung open. I hadn't been invited, but I'd driven an hour anyway, telling myself I'd just peek in. The bell jingled as I entered. Madison's back was to me, her ponytail swinging as she gestured at a mannequin. "So glad you're helping me pick, Babs. My mum would have chosen something frumpy with, puffy sleeves." Barbara's tinkling laugh cut off when she spotted me over Madison's shoulder. The attendant, a young girl with a measuring tape around her neck, flicked her eyes between us, her mouth parting in silent pity. Madison turned. For one suspended second, her face went slack with guilt. Then it hardened. "Mum, what are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see you," I whispered. She exhaled through her nose. "We're kinda busy." I backed out, the door chiming cheerfully behind me like this was just any other errand. That night, I climbed into the attic, dust coating my palms as I shoved aside boxes of Christmas decorations. There, wedged behind my old sewing machine, was Mr. Buttons, the teddy bear she'd slept with every night until middle school. His left ear was nearly bald from her anxious stroking, his button eyes loose from years of her clutching him after nightmares. "Only you understand, Mummy," she'd whisper into his fur, her small body trembling against mine after a bad dream. Now his stuffing smelled of mildew and thyme. The rehearsal dinner was worse. The restaurant was one of those dimly lit places where the silverware cost more than my mortgage. I arrived early, hovering near the hostess stand until Barbara swept in, her designer purse knocking against my hip as she air-kissed the maitre d'. "Ah, the Wilkins reservation. Right this way, Mrs. Carter." I followed the group to a long table, already half full with Jacob's grinning relatives. No place card for me. I stood awkwardly until a busboy dragged over a folding chair from the kitchen. Madison didn't look up as I sat. When the toasts began, Barbara raised her glass, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "To my new daughter," she trilled. Madison's eyes shone as she clinked her flute against Jacob's. Then Madison stood, "I just want to thank the family I've always wanted," she said, her gaze sweeping over Barbara, Jacob, his parents. My fingers curled around my untouched wineglass. At the other end of the table, Barbara smirked into her napkin. The bread basket made its way toward me. I reached for a roll just as Jacob's uncle snatched it from my fingertips. No one noticed. Have you ever loved someone so much it hurt, only to realize they'd outgrown you? The church loomed before me like a gilded cage. I arrived an hour early, too early, my hands clutching the beige clutch she'd approved. Not too flashy, Mum. The morning air smelled of roses and impending rain. My heels clicked against the stone steps, each step heavier than the last. A harried coordinator with a clipboard squinted at me. Name? Margaret Wilkins. I'm the... Her expression shifted. Oh, the bride said you might not come. A beat too long. Let me find your seat. She led me past rows of empty chairs, their satin bows fluttering like mocking smiles. The further we walked, the louder the hum of the HVAC system grew. Finally, she stopped beside a vent, rattling like a dying animal. Here you are. I stared at the chair. Last row, behind the sound booth, directly in line with a pillar that blocked half the altar. 3 rows ahead, a familiar shock of silver hair made my stomach lurch. David, her father. Front row center, legs casually crossed, looking like he'd never missed a single Little League game or ballet recital. Like he hadn't abandoned us with nothing but a Dear Jane letter and unpaid child support. The guests trickled in. No one sat near me. A woman in peacock blue silk glanced over, then deliberately turned her back. I smoothed my dress, the right shade of invisible. Then the music swelled. Everyone stood. And there she was. Madison floated down the aisle, a vision in lace, her smile brighter than the diamonds at her throat. My breath caught. She looked exactly like she had at 5 years old, playing dress-up in my wedding veil. Except now her joy wasn't for me. Our eyes met. Just for a second. A flicker. Then her gaze darted away, landing on David instead. His grin split his face as she passed him, his chest puffing with pride. The vows began. I mouthed the words along with her. I love you, like a prayer. Her fingers tightened around Jacob's. She didn't glance back. After the kiss, the photographer darted around the pews like a hummingbird, capturing every laugh, every tear. I straightened, offering a tentative smile as he neared my row. He adjusted his lens, looked right through me, and moved on. That night, while the reception roared without me, I scrolled through the wedding hashtag on my phone. Hundreds of photos flashed by. David lifting champagne with the groomsmen, Madison's new mother-in-law dabbing fake tears, even the damn flower girl getting her close-up. I zoomed in on the backgrounds, the edges, the blurry crowd shots. Not a single frame held my face. The HVAC vent rattled on. I closed the app. Somewhere between I do and forever, I'd vanished completely. The reception hall glittered like a jewelry box, all crystal and candlelight and champagne flutes catching the light. I sat at my assigned table, table 17, tucked between the DJ's equipment and a drafty emergency exit, and clutched the folded paper in my lap. My speech, the one I'd practiced in the mirror for months, whispering the words until they flowed like poetry. Up at the head table, Jacob's mother rose gracefully, her designer dress whispering against the chair. The microphone squealed as she tapped it, then launched into a flawless tribute. From the moment Madison came into our lives, she began, and my daughter leaned forward, her face glowing like the bride in those old romantic movies we used to watch together. I counted the pauses between the laughter, the exact beats where I'd planned to wink at my little girl. The room erupted in applause as Mrs. Whitmore finished, and Madison pressed a hand to her heart, mouthing "I love you" to this woman who'd known her for 3 years. The chicken on my plate congealed into something greasy and unappetizing. I excused myself, weaving through the crowd of strangers, their perfumes cloying and thick. The bathroom was empty, mercifully, and I locked myself in a stall, pressing a wad of scratchy paper towels to my mouth to muffle the ugly, heaving sobs. The door creaked open, high heels clicked across the tile. "Oh!" A pause. "Mrs. Wilkins?" I recognized the voice. Sophie, Madison's college roommate, now a bridesmaid, in eggplant-colored satin. I could see her designer shoes through the gap under the stall door, shifting awkwardly. "I didn't know you were... still here." Still here. As if I were some party guest, overstaying my welcome, instead of the woman who'd brought the bride into this world. I emerged, my face a ruined mess of smudged mascara. Sophie's smile faltered. "Madison looks beautiful," I managed, because mothers are expected to say things like that, even when their hearts are breaking. Back in the reception hall, the music pulsed louder. I hovered near the bar, watching my daughter float from table to table in a cloud of tulle and joy. A woman in a sequined dress grabbed Madison's arm. "Where's your mum?" she trilled, glancing around. "I've been dying to meet her." Madison's laugh was light, effortless. "Oh, she's around somewhere." A dismissive wave of her hand. "We're not that close." The words hit like a sucker punch. Not that close. 27 years of bedtime stories and skinned knees and whispered secrets reduced to a throwaway line for a stranger. My fingers found the familiar shape in my purse, the old stained recipe book, its pages warped from years of use. I flipped to the chocolate cake recipe, the one Madison used to beg for every birthday. "Only yours, Mommy, she'd say, licking the bowl with chocolate smeared across her cheeks. Now the wedding cake was some towering fondant monstrosity from a trendy bakery, ordered without a single consultation with me. The DJ announced the cake cutting. The crowd surged forward, phones raised to capture the moment. I stood, my chair scraping loudly, but no one turned. No one noticed as I gathered my coat and slipped out the side door. The parking lot was freezing, the cold air a slap after the stifling warmth of the reception. My car sat alone in the far corner, exactly where I'd parked it hours earlier. As I turned the key in the ignition, the first few bars of Butterfly Kisses floated out from the hall. I drove home in the dark, the unused speech crumpled on the passenger seat beside me. The silence after the wedding stretched into weeks, then months. No calls, no thank you note for the check I'd sent, the one that had forced me to choose between paying my electric bill and giving her a gift that might make her think of me, even for a second. The bank had called last week about the overdraft fee. I'd lied and said it was a medical emergency. I stood in the doorway of her old bedroom, now a sterile guest room with beige walls and impersonal hotel-quality linens. The purple glow-in-the-dark stars we'd stuck to the ceiling together were long gone, painted over. The only trace left of her was the faint indentation in the hardwood floor where her bed had sat for 18 years. Something made me drop to my knees beside it. The loose floorboard, the one she'd shown me when she was 9, whispering it was her secret treasure spot. My nails dug at the edge. It gave way with a groan. The shoebox was still there. Dust flew as I lifted it out. The lid resisted at first, as if even this small part of her life didn't want me prying. Inside, stacked neatly like evidence in a case against me, were every card, every note, every letter I'd ever sent her since she left for college. The envelopes were pristine, the seals unbroken. My hands shook as I picked up the top one, the thick ivory stationery I'd splurged on for her first day at UCLA. Inside, my own handwriting screamed up at me, "To my brave girl. Girl. By the time you read this, you'll be in your dorm room." The ink had faded to a ghostly blue. The paper crackled with age, brittle as my composure. She'd never read it. Never knew how I'd stayed up all night writing it. How I'd tucked a $20 bill inside in case of emergencies. How I'd kissed the envelope before sealing it. One by one, I unfolded them. Birthday cards with cash still tucked inside. Postcards from my rare vacations where I'd spent more time picking out the perfect message than sightseeing. The long letter I'd written after her father left, explaining it wasn't her fault. All unread. All preserved in this cardboard coffin. The last one undid me. A simple note from last Christmas. "Leftovers in the fridge, sweetheart. Love you more than the stars." She'd texted me that afternoon asking if there was any pie left. She'd never even glanced at the note beside it. I stuffed them back in the box, my fingers leaving damp prints on the cardboard. Before I could think, I was in the car, the box rattling on the passenger seat as I drove toward her new house, the one with Jacob, the one I'd never been invited to. Rain smeared the windshield as I parked across the street. Through their bay window, I could see them. Madison curled against Jacob on the couch, his arm around her, some cooking show playing on the massive TV we'd all chipped in to buy them. She threw her head back, laughing at something he said, the way she used to laugh at my jokes. My hand was on the door handle. The box sat heavy in my lap. I could march up there, ring the bell, force her to look at these unopened testaments to my love. But then she turned her face toward Jacob, letting him kiss her forehead, and something in the tender way his lips lingered told me everything I needed to know. She had someone to remember her leftovers now, someone to check if she'd taken her vitamins, someone to love her in ways I no longer got to. The box went back on the passenger seat. The engine started. As I drove away, the rain came harder, blurring their happy little house into a watercolor of everything I'd lost. What hurts more? Being forgotten, or realizing you were never truly seen to begin with? The phone shattered the silence at 3:17 a.m., its shrill ringtone slicing through the dark like an alarm. I fumbled for it, my heart already pounding before I even saw the name flashing on the screen. Madison. For one delirious, hopeful second, I thought, emergency. She needed me. After all these months of silence, my daughter was reaching out. "Sweetheart," I rasped, already swinging my legs out of bed, my mind racing through possibilities. Car accident, hospital, something terrible enough to make her forget she'd sworn me out of her life. "Mum." Her voice was flat, clinical. No panic, no tears, just 2 syllables dropped like stones. Then the words came, each one a carefully placed bullet. "I'm pregnant." My breath caught. My free hand flew to my mouth. A grandchild. A tiny, perfect. But I don't want you involved. The bedroom walls seemed to tilt. I gripped the nightstand to steady myself. "Well, what?" "You'll just smother it," she continued, as calmly as if she were ordering coffee. "Like you smothered me." The air left my lungs in a rush. Smothered. The word echoed in my skull, ugly and foreign. Is that what she called the nights I rocked her through fevers? The years I worked double shifts to keep her in dance lessons? The college applications I stayed up until dawn, helping her perfect? "Madison," I whispered, but the line was already dead. I sat there in the dark, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the hollow silence where my daughter's voice had been. Slowly, my gaze drifted to the nursery photos on the wall, the one of her at 6 months old, fingers curled trustingly around mine. That tiny hand had clung to me during thunderstorms, after nightmares, crossing busy streets. Now she was crossing a different threshold, into motherhood, and barring me at the door. I stumbled to the hallway bathroom, my reflection shocking me in the mirror. When had I gotten so old? The woman staring back had hollows under her eyes, deep grooves around her mouth, the face of someone who'd loved too much. The worst part? Some treacherous part of me still wanted to call her back, to promise I'd do better, to beg for just one ultrasound photo, one due date. But the phone stayed in my shaking hand, silent as a stone. Because maybe she was right. Maybe love wasn't supposed to leave fingerprints. Maybe I'd held on too tight, loved too loud, until my very devotion became a crime. Outside, dawn was breaking. Somewhere in the city, my daughter was carrying my grandchild. And for the first time in my life, I had no idea what to do next. The nursery photo watched me from the wall, her tiny fingers forever gripping mine, frozen in time. How did we get here? The rain slapped against my windshield as I sat parked outside her house, watching the warm glow of her living room lights through the downpour. 6 months. 6 months since the wedding. 6 months of silence. 6 months of staring at my phone like it might suddenly come alive with her voice. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I hadn't planned to come here tonight. Hadn't planned anything except drinking enough Chardonnay to drown out the memory of her turning away from me at the reception. The doorbell echoed through the house. Footsteps. Then her face appeared in the crack of the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, her expression shifting from surprise to something guarded. "Mum?" The word sounded like a question, like she wasn't quite sure I was real. "I need to understand," I said, my voice raw. Rain dripped from my hair onto her welcome mat. "Please." She hesitated, then stepped back. The house smelled like vanilla and baby powder, unfamiliar scents that made my chest ache. I followed her to the kitchen where she leaned against the counter, arms crossed. That defensive posture I remembered from her teenage years. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp laugh. "You always do that," she said. "Make it about what you wanted, what you expected." Her fingers tapped against her elbow. "You loved me too much. It was suffocating. Dad left because he couldn't compete with your complete absorption in me." The words hit like physical blows. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. All those years of packed lunches and bedtime stories, of sitting through every school play, of holding her hair back when she was sick, and she'd seen it as some kind of oppression? "You asked your father to walk you down the aisle," I whispered. A cruel smile twisted her lips. "I wanted you to know how it feels to be replaced, to be the afterthought." She picked at a spot on the counter. "You made me your entire world, Mom. That's not love. That's a prison." The kitchen walls seemed to close in around me. I thought of all the times I'd put her first, all the dreams I'd set aside. "I would have died for you," I breathed. Her eyes flashed. "That's the problem. Don't you see? I never wanted that kind of responsibility. I just wanted—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "A normal mother, not a martyr." Outside, the rain intensified, pounding against the windows like it wanted in, like it wanted to wash this whole terrible conversation away. I looked at my daughter, really looked, and saw for the first time the resentment that had been growing between us for years, invisible as mold behind wallpaper. "I thought I was doing the right thing," I said quietly. She sighed, the fight draining out of her. "I know you did. That's what makes it so sad." The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Somewhere in the house, a faucet dripped. We stood there, two women separated by more than just years, bound by a love that had somehow turned toxic. And I wondered if we'd ever find our way back to each other through the wreckage of all our good intentions. The pain came like lightning, a jagged bolt splitting my skull open at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. My left arm went limp, the phone clattering to the floor as I tried to dial 911. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was the framed photo on my nightstand. Madison at 7, grinning with missing front teeth, her arms thrown around my neck. I woke to the sterile sting of antiseptic and the rhythmic beep of machines. Wires snaked from my arms like vines, tethering me to this unfamiliar bed. A nurse with kind eyes told me I'd had a stroke. "We called your emergency contact," she said gently, adjusting my IV. "Your daughter." The clock on the wall ticked through 8 hours, then 12, then 24. The social worker came with her clipboard and practiced smile. "Who should we list as your emergency contact now?" she asked, pen poised over the blank line. I stared at the space where a name should go, where for 34 years I'd automatically written Madison Carter, née Wilkins. My hand trembled as I took the pen. I left it blank. That night, morphine dreams carried me to a sunflower field stretching endlessly under a golden sky. Tiny Madison raced toward me, sundress fluttering, arms outstretched. "Mummy!" she cried, just like she used to when I'd pick her up from kindergarten. I reached for her, but the moment our fingers touched, I woke to the harsh hospital lights and the sound of my own broken sobs. The doctor discharged me on Friday with a stack of pamphlets and a warning to take my blood pressure medication. "Is someone coming to get you?" he asked. I lied and said yes. The taxi ride home passed in a blur of stoplights and strangers' faces. As we turned onto my street, a terrible thought seized me. If I died that night, how long would it have taken her to notice? Would it have been days? Weeks? Would the neighbors have called when the mail piled up? My empty house greeted me with its familiar shadows. The calendar still open to last month. The voicemail light blinking with a single message, the hospital confirming my appointment for follow-up tests. I shuffled to the kitchen, my left leg dragging slightly, and stared at the magnets still holding Madison's childhood drawings to the fridge. Upstairs, my bed looked untouched. The nightstand photo was exactly where I'd left it. I traced her beaming face with my good hand, the glass cool beneath my fingertips. The stroke had stolen parts of my memory. What I'd eaten for breakfast last Tuesday, the name of my high school English teacher, but every detail of her childhood remained painfully sharp. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. The doctor had said I was lucky, minimal lasting damage. But as I stared at the ceiling, I wondered what exactly I'd been spared for. To rattle around this museum of motherhood alone? To keep vigil for a daughter who'd crossed her mother off her emergency contacts list? Somewhere across town, Madison was probably tucking her own child into bed, smoothing their hair, whispering "I love you" in that fierce way mothers do. Did she ever think about who used to say those same words to her? The hospital bracelet still circled my wrist. I picked at the plastic edge until it snapped. Home wasn't a place anymore. It was a person. And she didn't want me there. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 sharp raps that sent my teacup rattling in its saucer. I wasn't expecting anyone. At my age, The doorbell mostly brought pharmacy deliveries and neighborhood kids selling overpriced candy bars. Through the peephole, I saw the top of a familiar head, that same chestnut hair, though now styled in a sleek bob instead of the messy ponytail I remembered. She was shifting her weight from foot to foot, something bundled in pink clutched to her chest. My breath caught when the blanket shifted, and I saw the tiny fist waving in the air. I opened the door so fast, the chain lock snapped against the frame. There she stood, my Madison, but not the polished, distant woman from the wedding. This version had smudged mascara and a spit-up stain on her shoulder. Her eyes were red-rimmed, swollen. "Mum," she choked out, and the word landed like a punch to my sternum. She hadn't called me that in years. The baby made a soft gurgling noise, stretching miniature fingers toward the sunlight. 7 months old, maybe 8. My granddaughter, a life I hadn't been told about, let alone invited to meet. Madison's breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't understand until I held her. Every angry word I'd rehearsed in the shower, every tear-stained letter I'd written and never sent, dissolved in that instant. Because suddenly I was looking at my 19-year-old self, holding a squalling newborn in a hospital bed, equally terrified and awestruck by the weight of that perfect, impossible love. The baby, Ellie, I'd later learn her name was, reached for me with those starfish hands. When her tiny fingers closed around my pinky with that instinctive newborn grip, time folded in on itself. I was back in a different living room, with a different baby, marveling at those same perfect fingernails, that same miraculous grip. We sat on the couch where I'd once rocked Madison through colic nights. The silence between us was thick with all the words we couldn't say, the recriminations, the explanations, the years of missed birthdays and unanswered calls. Madison stared at her daughter with that particular expression new mothers get, equal parts wonder and exhaustion. "Can we?" She swallowed hard, tears splashing onto Ellie's blanket. "Can we try again?" My heart screamed yes before my brain could intervene. But the scars ran deep. I'd spent too many nights staring at the ceiling, wondering where I'd failed her, to leap blindly now. I watched Ellie's chest rise and fall, her eyelashes fluttering against chubby cheeks, this tiny person who connected us despite everything. "We can try," I said carefully, and when Madison collapsed against my shoulder, her tears soaking through my blouse, I let myself tentatively stroke her hair, just like I had when she was small and the world had hurt her feelings. Ellie cooed between us, oblivious to the tectonic plates of our relationship shifting beneath her. Outside, a spring breeze ruffled the curtains I'd sewn back when I still believed love was enough to keep people from leaving. Maybe this time, it would be. The first time she showed up unannounced with the baby in her arms, I nearly collapsed against the doorframe. 2 years of silence between us, and there she stood, my daughter, her eyes red-rimmed, clutching a car seat with tiny pink shoes peeking out. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. The baby had been crying for hours. Colic, maybe. Or maybe she just sensed the tension in her mother's arms. I didn't ask questions. Just took the car seat, my fingers brushing against hers for the first time in years. The moment the baby, Sophie, her name is Sophie, wrapped her fist around my finger, something inside me cracked open. It's not perfect. Some mornings I still wake up gasping from dreams of that empty chair at the wedding. Sometimes when Madison talks about Jacob's mother, Marilyn takes Sophie every Tuesday, I have to bite my tongue until I taste copper. The wounds are still there, just scabbed over. But she visits now. Not every week, but often enough that I keep apple juice in the fridge, her favourite, and a pack of those organic rice cakes she insists on feeding Sophie. Sometimes she even calls just to talk. Just last week, she phoned at 10 p.m. whispering, "Remember that lullaby you used to sing me? The one about the moon?" On the other end of the line, Sophie wailed. My voice cracked as I sang it into the phone. The first time Sophie said Nana, I sobbed into her curls so hard I scared her. Madison had to pry her out of my arms. But she didn't scold me, just squeezed my shoulder, a first, and said, "She loves you, I can tell." I keep the shoebox of unopened letters in my bottom dresser drawer. Sometimes, when the house gets too quiet, I take them out, run my fingers over the "To my darling girl" written in my shaky handwriting. I don't open them, don't need to. The love in them hasn't changed, even if the girl I wrote them to has. Last Sunday, Madison stayed for dinner. As she washed dishes, a miracle in itself, Sophie toddled over and pressed a sticky hand to my cheek. "Nana sad?" she lisped. I hadn't even realized I was crying. Madison turned, dishcloth dripping, and met my eyes for the longest moment since before the wedding. No grand apology, no dramatic reconciliation, just a quiet, "Pass the salt, Mum," that felt like absolution. They say love means letting go. But maybe, just maybe, sometimes it means being the one who stays. Even when it hurts, even when you're forgotten. Because people get lost. But love, real love, it learns to wait in the dark. If you've ever held on when every part of you wanted to let go, tell me in the comments. This story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who's ever loved someone back to life. Like, share, and subscribe for more raw, real stories about the messy, miraculous work of stitching hearts back together.